Welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. So this is new. I mean, the channel, yes, but the video series. It was requested that I try Testimony Tuesdays, which obviously I'm assuming is a thing, or maybe not. Maybe she made it up. I think she thought it was a thing. I don't know. And I was kind of thinking about that because I've shared my diagnosis, but I haven't shared really my past. I've shared a little bit about it. So I've been kind of going back and forth with, I have so many testimonies in every area that I don't really, I want to be kind of, here's the issue, okay? When I first started speaking at women's conferences, it was very hard for me to talk about my past, not because like it's hard to go back there, but because I had this really weird attitude about it for a very long time. I don't want you feeling sorry for me. I don't need your pity. I'm not a punk. I'm not going to sit up here and cry about it. And I realized that that was something I was doing to kind of protect myself, because the reality is that when I really go back, like when I went back with my therapist and I had to make a timeline of all the different traumas and everything that happened and all the things that have affected me, they are sad. And I would be sad if they happened to any little kid. And that kid just happened to be me. And it's okay for me to be sad for her, because somebody should have protected her. Somebody should have stood up for her and said, this is not okay, got her the help that she needed. And I'm not here to place blame. My mother was a single mom who was working her butt off to try to support us with no help from anybody. I mean, no help from family. She didn't have help from the government. And, she didn't really know what to do with these kind of situations. So that's not what this is about. But this is about the fact that it does help to understand a lot of the different aspects of who I am because of the different things that I've gone through. So I was thinking about one of the testimonies that I wanted to share. And I think I'm going to start with essay, because you can't say it on YouTube and social media. And I understand, because it could be a trigger, and I will put a trigger warning in this video. I don't see the point in going into detail about that. Like I have seen where we've been at conferences and there's been people who kind of almost relive the trauma of that they experienced, these horrific travesties, and then you relive it a little bit. And I don't think it's that necessary to do that. And I don't see how that would help. Like, I don't need to go into detail to tell you that if I'm 3 years old and there's a 19-year-old predator who has access to the children that his mother was watching while she went to the store, and he just did whatever he wanted to with us. He would lock the boys outside and he would just do whatever he wanted to with the girls. And I was often his favorite. And in many parts of it, I've blacked out. But I can remember, I can tell you what I could draw for you, because I've done this, exactly what the living room looked like, the couch, the TV, the kitchen where the boys were locked out, the hallway that led to the bathroom where he would take me. But the thing is that I actually didn't understand the depth of that and how much that affected me, and how I saw myself and my value. And the fact that nothing was ever done about that. And those other kids that were there, just, I don't know how long they all experienced that and what's become of all of them, because I think about that too, because it wasn't just me. But what I do know is that it wasn't until my oldest daughter was 3 years old, and she said that a boy hurt her down there when I was giving her a bath, and I flipped out, and I was ready to kill everybody. I was enraged. And I think at that point is when I realized, wait a minute, I was just a 3-year-old girl too. I should be enraged for her too. And that was when I first started but even after that, I think, it still took a really long time to understand that, unless we go back and deal with all the different things that have happened to us and how they affected how we see ourselves, how those things were handled, they definitely start molding you and like chipping away at you, right? And so that was my first experience with that. Um, and with my daughter, by the way, it actually was just that a boy pushed her while she was on the bike and she fell and hurt herself. But my point was, I was so enraged because of the age and this and what had happened to me that I didn't even take the time to figure that out before I started like wanting to kill everybody. And then when it all came out, I realized that that intense reaction, without actually getting any kind of facts, was because I needed to deal with my past. Um, so there was basically, we moved a lot, sometimes twice a year. I don't even, it wasn't like, I think until the fifth grade where I went to like the school, like two whole semesters, like two whole school years in a row. Um, so we moved a lot, and it just seems like there were predators everywhere. There just was. And, um, it doesn't make sense for me to really go in and recap and all of the different people who abused me. Sometimes it was adults that lived nearby in the back, neighbors. Sometimes it was people's relatives. Sometimes was the older boys in the neighborhood because I was a latchkey kid, and you're out in the street and kids do whatever they do. And I was also exposed to porn at a very young age. So I had a porn addiction. I mean, I know the earliest I think I remember seeing porn, I was 5 or 6. And I know I had an addiction to porn very, very young. And I praise God that I do not anymore. But what sucks about porn is that, like, it's just burning your brain forever. So I could be in church, I could be anywhere, just trying to be me, trying to pray, trying to do whatever. And gross things that I wish I never saw just flash in my mind. And it's just there until this life is done. It's just there, I guess. Um, it's just like another drug. But so the sexual addictions and the abuse really took on its own life when I became a teenager, um, because I was 12 when I was assaulted by a 23-year-old. And I thought we were in love. I thought that he was my boyfriend, but I also knew you had to hide it. I knew it was wrong, but I also, older men had found me attractive since I was 3, so I also was used to it and thought maybe I was an exception. I really didn't know what to make of everything that had happened to me. So at 12, he had taken me to a motel, and when we came out of the motel, the police were there, and they looked at me, and they looked at him, and I looked 12. And they said, "How old are you?" And I said, was it 16? I'm stuttering. I don't look nobody's 16. And then they asked him, "How old are you?" He said, "I'm 18. And he starts walking away, and they said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I have to return the key." And they let him walk off. So, of course, he left me there. And the police arrested me. And I guess they were accusing me of being a prostitute and doing drugs, which was my first invitation into the world of underage prostitutes, because they exist and the police did not treat them like victims at the time. They treated them like masterminds, like they were a pimp, or like a 12-year-old is not being trafficked, but that was a different time. But anyway, so I was arrested. I was taken down to the station. They called my mother. They performed the R kit at the hospital, and they said, she is so damaged. I don't know that she'll ever have children. Looking in here, and obviously I have 4 kids, so that wasn't completely accurate. But I think, ultimately the DA actually convinced my mom to not press charges, because they said they're going to put me on the stand and they're going to accuse me of being this and that and the other, and it would traumatize me. And so he completely got away with it. And to this day, I know that he went on to work at like schools with young kids, like with youth, and I'm sure he never stopped doing what he was doing. So I think a part of my like, it wasn't just that the people immediately around me did not find value in me. It was that even like the people at the courts didn't want to waste their time with me or getting justice for me. And then I was close to a youth pastor at one point when I was young, and he came on to me, and I had tried to go to psychiatrists, and I had psychiatrists who were like, well, you're attractive. What do you, and I'm like, here's what I get out of all of this. But the message that I got from all of that my whole life was that was the only value that was in me was related to sex. The only value that was in me was related to men finding pleasure with me in that way. I would see couples who had been together forever and married and in love, and I would think, there's no way that anyone's ever going to find that value in me. I've been used by so many people, and I think I was 13 when I was thinking this. Like I remember thinking this as young as like 10, that no one would ever love me, no one would ever want me. And a lot of that has to do with not having a father or having a father figure, because my father was schizophrenic and he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And he actually had made sexually inappropriate comments to me as well. And when I was around him, he just wanted to be my friend and give me alcohol. And the message I got time and time again was that that was my worth, it was sexual. So ultimately I believed that, and I thought that if I could be in control and I didn't care and I made the choice and I didn't call people back, then it was like I'm in power. And looking back at what a lie the enemy had me convinced that, like, you're already dirty, you're already used. Guys are going to be like this anyway. You might as well use and abuse and misuse yourself. I took on the role of my own abuser and didn't even realize it. And all the way to the point where, I had just never been faithful to anybody. I was a stripper for a little while. And it took me being with a real man who is a beautiful man who had such a healthier view on sex than I did to really call me out on the fact that sex and love are not the same things. Um, and that all men were not like that. And that was another lie that I bought into, that I think a lot of women still buy into, that all men are like that. Um, and so it's taken me a really long time to understand the difference between being attractive and trying to get an attention from someone that is not the kind of attention I should want from anybody but my husband. And trying to understand that my value is so much deeper than that. My value is not defined from all the people that the enemy used to hurt me and attack me and use me and whatever. My worth and value is defined based on who God says I am as a child of God. I am a daughter of the Most High. And and I don't really struggle with that anymore, but it took a really, really, really long time. And the last time that that I was not in remission and that I had a really bad borderline flare up, it was probably the worst one in a long time, because in that place I had read that in the beginning, right? That I didn't even know who I was or what I believed in anymore. And then once I was not God's daughter, then I had to go back to trying to define myself outside of that in the terms of this world. And I didn't feel at that time like my husband really found value in me. And then I realized that without me being defined by God's definition of value, and if I don't think that my husband, who's been with me for all these years, find value in me, then I went back to that old way of thinking. And so I believe that is why, for me, I try so hard to want to help younger women understand, and all women understand, that your value is not defined by anybody outside of God, and you can let this world tear you down and tear you apart. And the enemy will always come after children. He will always, that is the initiation into the demonic realm, is abusing children. And the importance of dealing with that, healing through that, not avoiding it, not trying to hide from it, and then realizing that you don't just want to be a survivor, right? Because anybody could technically survive anything, but just because you're alive doesn't mean you're living. You want to be a thriver. You want to overcome, and you want to be able to help others because God helped you. And I believe that at this point, that all of the abuse that I had sustained up until I was old enough to know better, and then the abuse that I continued to inflict on myself all throughout my late teens, early 20s, you know, up until recently, really, up until this last time that I was able to go into remission and really do some real healing and therapeutic CPTSD treatments, was I really able to look back and kind of decipher through like who I was created to be, who I'm being called to be, and the things that were getting in the way of all of that because of lies and damage that had been inflicted on me from childhood forward. And so I thought I would just start on that because so many women have experienced that, and men have experienced that. And if you are one of them, please don't think that you don't need to deal with it if you haven't dealt with it. And even if you have dealt with it, make sure it's not still affecting who you are, because you don't want to be molded in the present by what other people did, because then you're giving them victory, right? Like whatever was done before, God, he gonna have to deal with God. All of them are gonna have to deal with God and answer to God for what they've done. But I've healed that little girl. And so I feel like not only can I move forward and have a healthy and loving marriage and healthy and loving relationships with others, but then I can try and help others who have been through the same thing. And that's the key to really seeing successful, not only survivor, but thriver, being a thriver who really can turn around and turn something that was meant for awful and turn it around and use it for the good. So that's my first testimony Tuesday. It's about that part of my testimony. But the reality is some of these testimonies are going to have to be about how I have hurt other people and how God has come back and was able to redeem those relationships through forgiveness for what I've done. Because a lot of times testimonies, we think it's about what has happened to us, but it's just as strong of a testimony of how I've hurt others and how God was able to redeem that, or I was offered forgiveness, because none of us are perfect. So that'll be coming in the future, but this is my first one. So we'll see how this goes. And I will see you guys on the next video. God bless. Have a great week.